Hi all, I have an absolutely amazing encounter between two greats of the game. Bobby Fischer was playing white against Mikhail Tal. This is one of the 4 games played at the 1959 candidates. So Fischer was just a teenager at this stage, and this was a very difficult candidates tournament, playing each opponent. They played 4 times each. Now in this game, Fischer kicked off with e4. Remember, Tal was also, by the way, at the peak of his powers. This candidates enabled him to play Mikhail Botvinnik in the 1960 World Championship match. So yeah, Tal actually won the candidates of 1959. Okay, Tal in this candidates did play the Sicilian defense. Here in this game, knight f3, d6. We have an open Sicilian. Knight f6, knight c3, and the Najdorf a6, which is also, after bishop c4, black now plays e6. He wants to blunt this bishop. For those of you wanting a little bit of detail about the theory here, bishop c4 is not one of the main moves overall. It seems in this position, for example, bishop e3 or bishop g5. Against bishop g5, e6 has also been played a bit. But if bishop e2, funny enough, black usually elects to play e5. So there's some flexibility about black's use of the Najdorf here, the a6 kind of high-class waiting move. What is white doing? You know, it decides if black's going to play either e6 or e5. But against bishop c4, e6 is very, very logical, blunting that bishop. So this is the Sicilian Sozin attack. So bishop b3, we have bishop e7, and Fischer is very keen in this game to maximize his bishop on b3, to blast it through the diagonal, and he does so here with an immediate f4. So guns blazing. After castling, queen f3. Now Tal plays queen c7, which not only puts the brakes on potentially e5, but also it means if b5 here, e5, there's usually bishop b7 supported by the queen on c7. So it's at least a dual purpose move. But also black is often aiming to use the c4 square, for example, a knight maneuver sometimes. But queen c7 is a very, very logical move which fits into this particular position extremely well, like a glove. White castles here, and now b5 is possible. So e5 isn't destructive because there's bishop b7 in this position. Now, if Fischer was trying to be cautious here, he'd be concerned about bishop b7 and the pressure on e4, and maybe consider a move like a3. But here black is fine actually. For example, bishop b7, f5. This position, black is fine, more than fine. Black's at least equalized. Fischer plays a more aggressive move here. He actually plays f5. And there are some downsides here. Of course, the bishop is trying to be maximized on the diagonal. And Tal just plays b4. It seems very logical to undermine and try and blast through the center. We talk about control of the center, but also the center is a way of often going to the opponent's kings. And here it's not just about e4, it's about the pressure. If this bishop can blast through the whole diagonal, then that's even better. That's an even more aggressive intention, the way we view the central squares. And this game is kind of instructive how black is putting enormous pressure, not just on the center, but trying to see through it to the opponent's king. You know, especially, for example, this diagonal, and maybe even this diagonal. Okay, so we have now knight a4. If white wants to play super dynamically, he could have considered f takes e6 as a piece sack. It's interesting to consider briefly because there's a couple of pawns here. If king h8, queen takes c3, there is pressure here
for white for the sacrifice piece in this line. Black should trade carefully. Maybe a move like this is best. If black plays queen takes here, then white could end up with quite a bit of compensation. In fact, technically the engines think white is better here. This is a really interesting hidden line of the game. And the reason I wanted to mention this game, this line, this variation, is because it does seem a little bit odd for knight a4 in some respects. You know, it seems a little bit potentially misplaced. But yeah, I mean, other moves also may have been possible, but knight a4 seems a little bit misplaced. We see e5 here, knight e2, and now there's pressure on the center with bishop b7. There is the possibility, well, if this pressure can be resolved, that maybe the knight can be justified later with bishop e3 and going into b6, to be fair. But for the moment, white's immediate concern is to handle the central pressure with knight g3. So it seems as though black is putting pressure on points like d5 and e4 here. We see the move knight bd7, which covers b6. And also maybe knight c5 might be useful at some point. Now here, bishop e3, which potentially justifies the knight on a4. And you might think this is quite good now, because surely, hang on, c3. And this knight, if it takes, then the knight just springs back into life and controls d5. But we see a really fantastic move here, which echoes this idea. I think we're taught when we start chess about the 4 key central squares, and in a way this is a classic example game, because it takes that concept, it embraces that. This next move of Tal kind of embraces that we want to pressurize the center as much as possible, but also we want to see through the center potentially to the opponent's weaknesses, like the king side. That would be the ideal, not just conquer the center. That could be a stepping stone basically to the opponent's king. And this next move really ticks all the boxes for that. Can you guess what Mikhail Tal plays in this position? It's a really beautiful move, although it's a quiet move. Don't expect a wham bam move. I'm not expecting a Tal magic sacrifice move. It's just a beautiful but simple, effective move here. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play with black? Okay, bishop c6. It prepares queen b7, but not only are we putting more pressure on e4, remember the king is here. If we can blast open this diagonal, that's also step 2. Step 1, try and conquer this diagonal, conquer these key central squares. There's also another aspect, of course. This knight is vulnerable as well. It fits in so well like a glove. Again, this move into the position, because potentially there's moves like queen a5 as well, which could be dangerous. We have here in this position the move bishop f2. You might wonder about actually what's wrong with queen a5 here, just trying to win the knight on a4. Queen a5, there's actually a move which saves white in this position. This wasn't played. Queen b7 was played, but if queen a5, can you see a move which would save white here? It's fascinating because that knight otherwise looks a bit drunken, a bit a tactical target, but there's actually, in this particular position, it's not entirely clear cut. White can play, if I give you 5 seconds. Okay, white can play a3 here, it turns out. So for example, if we take now, we play a takes, unleashing a nasty pin, and white would end up being better here, at least a little bit better. Yeah. So that's not so easy. Okay, so yeah, Tal didn't play that. He played queen b7, which is again this idea of not just pressurizing the center, but trying to see through to the opponent's king potentially. We see rook
fe1, just defending, but what else? You see this knight's been misplaced. Usually it would be holding together the central squares, which is why in a way this game's like super instructive for central control. A knight on the rim here, they say is dim, but it's also not controlling the central squares. And that's step one of step two, which is, you know, trying to blast, you know, potentially away the opponent's king. So this knight's not helping, in a way, king's safety. Not just the centre, but also king's safety. We see a move which again puts intense pressure, even more now, on the centre, and is totally justified here. Can you see what black plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, it's a liberating move, more than a liberating move, it's a super aggressive move, trying to blast out in this diagonal. Of course it opens up this bishop as well, it's no longer a prisoner of the pawn chain. So much pressure now on the centre, and white relinquishes part of his occupation of the centre. Now sometimes that's not disastrous, as long as you've got a control, a grip, but here the grip's going as well. After knight takes d5, yeah, there's already discovered attacks like knight c3, for example, which would win that knight on a4. Not just knight f4, but knight c3. This again echoes a tactical target. You know, knight c3 would be a threatening bishop takes queen. Let's just put that on the board. As an example, h3, knight c3. Puts pressure on the queen. Also, knight takes a4 next. So white has to address things like that. It's a nasty position. He plays knight e4, which does seem to address at least knight c3 for the moment. But knight f4 now. The knight's difficult to kick away. There's always, for example, if g3, there's always knight h3 check. It's difficult to evict this knight. It's nasty. White plays now. Also black. Not only that, black is threatening knight f6 in this position to really blast through the entire diagonal. If white has to play taking with check, then g2 is going to be hanging after. Let me just show you some examples now of what I just mentioned. g3, if we try and kick the knight with g3, it looks as at minimum the check is very, very tasty. Then we can play knight g5. That's excruciatingly painful on that diagonal, excruciatingly. It just seems absolutely terrible. King f1. I mean, we've even got resources here like bishop b5 check. Okay, so, and also, you know, if just to demonstrate this threat, knight f6 is just nasty. How does white hold up e4? If he has this position and that's check and the queen moves, then g2 is going to drop. So a very, very difficult position. Very difficult. Fischer plays c4. He's already, even just at move 20, this is why it's good to have a slow motion sort of appreciation of the threats of this game. Because even at move 20, white's position is teetering on the edge of, you know, total disaster. Now this move is optimistic for BC because then the knight could come back from the rim of the board. But it also means if knight f6 now, then bishop c2. But even here, this is favourable for black. Black's better. You know, king h8, for example, to get out of any checks. Black's better there. But that's the idea, basically, against knight f6, to play bishop c2. It facilitates bishop c2. But Tal doesn't bother with that aspect of torturing the pin. No, he's got another way of torturing this enormous pin. Can you see what he plays? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here. So you want to actually blast through the centre now to the opponent's king. You really want to do that. How would you do that? 5 seconds, black to play. Okay, g6, yes, it's really trying to undermine the f5 pawn so we can later play f5. Note also the bishop, unfortunately with c4, as a side effect, has essentially unpinned the f7 pawn. So if this f7 pawn can get involved in torturing the pin, trying to blast away through the opponent's king, again, this in a way has king safety implications if black's getting this blast through the diagonal. We have here the move f takes g6, and the position is super fantastic for black here. In fact, there's at least two moves that are super fantastic and logical. The move that Tal played is really, really strong, but even a simple move is really, really strong. Tal actually played a very, very energetic move in this position. Can you guess what Tal played? 5 seconds. f5. It turns out here that black doesn't even need to do a pawn sack. The position is so incredibly strong that h takes g, with simply the threat of f5. Remember, this bishop is not pinning that f7 pawn. This is just incredibly strong. If we have this position, for example, it's just horrible for white. If white has to sack the exchange or something to get into these complications, this is a line which is just horrible for white. Absolutely disastrous. So even the position is so strong by this stage that even hg is really strong. But f5 is a little bit more stunning looking, the pawn sack. We have g7 here, g7, and now king takes g7 is played, which steps off the diagonal, but it also means now structurally black can look forward to the g file, another road in to white's king, not just this diagonal but that g file, and they can combine on squares like g2, for example. Now to break the pin, we have queen g3 check, but after king h8, yeah, rook g8 is now a major concern. So Fischer has to act quickly. He's going to get blown away with rook g8 in this position. The bishop's not covering any squares at the moment. Fischer plays knight ec5. We have knight takes c5. Bishop takes c5. Bishop takes c5 check was played. But, you know, this position here is also, you might think bishop takes g2 and you'd be right. Instead of bishop takes c5, maybe Tal wanted to protect his e-pawn intuitively for the game continuation. But it turns out, you know, bishop takes g2 is incredibly dangerous, because actually, if you look at this, isn't black threatening something very naughty after bishop takes g2? Can you see? Yeah, black's threatening knight h3 check. And actually, this is like, it threatens, I mean, this is like a forced mate if knight h3 is allowed. And now, for example, if bishop takes e7, check would just win the queen. White has to give up the queen. It's like horrible. And if king f2, pardon me, after bishop takes g2, if king f2, this is a totally winning position here after rook g8. It's just crunching. The queen's almost like being run out of squares, and if we use e3, then things like bishop h4 check, it's carnage. It's just, let's put this on the board, just experience the carnage. It's just not nice. Look at this coordination. It's dramatic. Yeah. So okay, let's go back. So yeah, it seems as though Tal could have finished off things with bishop takes g2. It's incredibly dangerous with that knight on f4. But we have bishop takes c5 check, knight takes, and there I believe Tal's concern was for the e5 pawn to take things simply, with protecting e5 first and then playing rook g8 at leisure. So queen c7 betrays that idea. He just wanted to protect e5 and play rook g8 at leisure. Note with the knight on c5, This bishop cannot influence this diagonal. The pawn has to move first, and then the bishop finally do something about g8. But even then, you know, it could be an exchange sack, and we still blast through to g2. So black is faced with this. Black is giving this crossfire to white on not just diagonal but the file. It's lethal. We have queen e3 here, and again the pawn on e5 is protected against the check possibility. It turns out, you know, black could have played rook g8, for example, g3, and here this is a dangerous position indeed. This is quite crushing as well, for example, like this. Yeah, it's all pretty murderous. This variation is pretty murderous as well. But for the moment, yeah, we have the calm, just protecting e5 very simply. Rook e2, Fischer offers an exchange sack in hope for some respite against his king. If he played a move like g3 here, check, f4, similar to what we've just seen, it's carnage on the f file now as well as the g file. This sort of thing, the discovered check here, shows, yeah, it's not very nice, the variations which are being created here. So rook e2, very desperate defensive try. It's taken, and now a crushing blow which strips bare white's king. I guess that's a bit of a clue. Can you see what black plays? Strips bare white's king. Did I say black's king? White's king is taken, the shelter is taken away. Yeah, bishop takes g2. So if queen takes, we can pin the queen to the king. Now, king. If king takes, then we have a check, and we can just take on c5. This is simple and strong. For example, here, queen c6. There's no way. White's the exchange downright, and all black has to do is play a move like rook g4 to finish things off elegantly, with ideas of queen h1 and rook e4 in this line, or pinning the queen. So yeah, this is just totally gone. If king takes g2, it's gone. You know, if queen, as I mentioned, if queen takes, then we just pin the queen. If king takes, it's the exchange down and hopeless. So white plays knight takes a6. We have this check here, queen a7 check. King takes. And it's white that is now, for the moment, technically might be material up even. But look at white's pieces. They're just not doing anything. The black rooks with the queen are a pretty lethal combination here. Queen g7 now threatens. Queen h6, checkmate. We have bishop d1 desperately trying to say, well, if check, then queen h5. But rook e6, threatening a forced mate in 3. And the game ended here, actually. Fischer resigned. If he plays, let's say he played a move like a ridiculous looking move as an example, then check, 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 just to show the sort of mating patterns here. Yeah, it's not particularly pleasant, this position at all. If, say, queen h5, check, and mate. Yeah, this is absolutely lethal, this rook e6. If there's, I think one central lesson of this game is black in the Sicilian defense is trying to fight for
for those central squares. But what's behind the central squares? The opponent's weaknesses you want to get to. So it seems in this game we've got a vivid demonstration of the diagonal, but also the G file, the way that was used as well. So we had two roads to the opponent's king in intersection, and it's, yeah, a lot of white's trouble stem from this. It seems a very tactical move, knight a4, as though it's provoking black into moves like queen a5, but Tal's not interested in just winning material. He's just interested in this central concept. He sticks with that central concept. Fight for the center, destroy some of white's occupation and control, go right to white's king. Forget about taking the knight on a4. But that knight on a4 did not help white's grip on the center. It did not help any of this. It basically was bad for king safety in a nutshell, playing the offside knight. But a fantastic game. It just shows Tal played some super elegant, risk-free, basically risk-free games, as well as his more magnificent, stunning games, which created this amazing magician reputation on his road to the 1960 World Chess Championship match with Mikhail Botvinnik. I hope you enjoyed this. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.